Zibachina leil shimorim. The day that we left Mitzrayim, the day we left exile, the day we left our suffering behind, it was called the night of shimorim. Shimorim comes from the word to protect, to safeguard. It also comes from the language of to anticipate or look forward to. We know that Yaakov Avinu, when he heard Yosef Hatzadik's dream, his son's dream, even though he rebuked him in front of his brothers, the Torah says that he guarded that day. And Rashi says, what does it mean? It means he was secretly looking forward to it. So too, and this is very big chizuk for us because we know that the Geula of Mitzrayim, the redemption from exile, is going to mirror the redemption that's coming for us, Bezrat Hashem, today. And in what sense is it paralleled here? In a very, very beautiful, encouraging one. That is that even though it looks at times in our life that Hashem isn't listening to us, or isn't hoping for the best for us, or isn't assisting us, isn't with us in the mud and the muck of our life. And we're learning here that this day, or this night, really, this night of redemption is a night that's shimorim, that he's been looking forward to since the beginning. And that just goes to show you, first of all, how patient Hashem is. And obviously, it also goes to show that it must be that all of these thousands of years of anticipation for it are actually an indication of how sweet that night of Shimorim is going to be, how sweet that night of Geula is going to be. Shemeshubar min hamazikim. It says in Masechet Pesachim, why was it called the night of Shimorim? Because it was protected from the mazikim. We know in Kabbalah there's a concept of klipot, the sitra achra, that is the shells, the husks, the external spiritual forces in the world which nourish from the Jewish souls. And they're the cause for all of our struggles and suffering in our life. So Rabbi Nachman's teaching that on that night, he completely nullified those forces. And that was the reason we were able to leave behind our suffering. Because like Rav Natan keeps slamming home into our head, into our heart, that the primary damagers in the world are not physical. And in some sense, they're not even spiritual. They're rooted in a type of wisdom, a type of knowledge. That is the knowledge of Teva, the knowledge of nature. That this wisdom of nature is the root of all of the mazikim. Shubachina dinim, this is the root of dinim. And why is that? Because in Kabbalah it's explained that chesed is, which means kindness, is really the revelation of Hashem in your life. The revelation of Hashem's hashgacha, how Hashem runs your life, every particular facet of it, every aspect of it, every moment of your life is actively and conscientiously being orchestrated by Hashem. So when you experience that at some point in your day or in the week or Bezrat Hashem in the year, so then Hashem gave you his chesed. That's what we're really praying for when we say Gimilut Chasadim, that you give us these gifts of chasadim, that these kindnesses is really the mochin, the consciousness that Hashem is orchestrating your life and that he loves you, okay? What's the opposite of that? This is called dinim. Dinim means judgments, but spiritually, dinim really represent the concealment of that knowledge from you. So when Hashem is concealing that knowledge from you, that's as a result of these mazikim, these damagers. And what we're learning is that really those damagers have no life outside of Chokhmat HaTeva. Because what is the greatest obstruction to the light of godliness? The fact that Hashem does whatever he wants, whenever he wants, that he loves you, and that he's constantly trying to make things happen in your life in order to bring you closer to him. And that in one moment, he could switch everything in your life to the ultimate good. So the biggest obstruction to that is belief that nature is the overriding reality in the world. That the laws of nature can't be contravened, that the laws of nature are set, that they were existed from before time, and they're existing until the end. They're not a creation of Hashem. They are, so to speak, the God of the world. And even though for a long time Avodah Zarah was the concept of bowing down to statues and to sticks and to stones and to stars in the sky, we have our own form of avodah zarah. And this is what Rabbi Nachman and Rav Natan are trying to drive home to us. And that avodah zarah for us is the belief that nature is godly. That nature is something which precedes and resides over any force in the world. When in fact, it's a creation of Hashem, just like any other creation of Hashem. And just like other creations of Hashem, they live and they die, right? They rise and they fall. And Hashem does with them whatever he wants. So too, nature is the exact same way. That if Hashem wants to, he will contradict the laws of nature. So Rabbi Nachman and Rav Natan are teaching now that the greatest damage in a Jew's life is the internalization and the investment of nature as your God. Shubachinat maziki alma. And this is the concept of akum. This is people that they worship foreign gods, and specifically kochavim. Why the stars? Because the stars represent, so to speak, the epitome of nature at that time. And then on the night that we went out of Mitzrayim, meaning we went out of our suffering, we went out of the place of damage, it was the nullification of nature on that night. That's what it means that it was a night of shimorim, because Hashem protected us from the damagers that night, and that's how we were able to leave. Meaning he protected us from secular wisdom. And once secular wisdom was abolished, once the concept of nature and silence was shown only to be an extremity of creation, not that it is the creator itself, then we're able to leave behind our suffering. Because once these mazike, once the concept of teva, sorry, I'm a little sick. Once the concept of teva, nature, was nullified, then all of a sudden the concept of nighttime was nullified. Because the whole concept of night versus day is one of teva. And nighttime, which is a time of suffering, which is a time of exile, it's a time of concealment of good, concealment of joy, concealment of life force. So we think it has to be. It has to always be like that. And we're looking for the day. We're looking for the day. We're looking for the life. We're looking for the joy. We're looking for happiness. We're looking for connection. That's all connected daytime. But who says nighttime can't be exactly like daytime? Science, teva, secular wisdom. Therefore, this night had to be protected from all the damagers and all the judgments, all the forces which conceal the light of godliness, which conceal the fact that Hashem is the Baal Bayit and that he does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He protected us from us that night because that would be the only way we can leave Mitzrayim behind. Because like Rabbi Nachman teaches in the 7th lesson of Likutey Moran and the 9th lesson of Likutey Moran and all over Likutey Moran, that Geula, redemption, is impossible without emunah, specifically that Hashem is Machadesh, that Hashem can renew and change reality at any given moment if he desires. And only a person who believes that is capable of, so to speak, forcing Hashem's hand to do so, which Hashem is very happy to do so for you. It's not difficult for him to do so. However, there's a prerequisite. Just like when you go to college and you take a certain class, you need certain honors or prerequisites. For you to experience a miracle in your life, Rabbi Nachman says you need to believe in miracles. You guys know, I've said this story many times over about the Klausenberger Rabbi, that he was in the show, he was in the camps, and they were walking on a death march from one of the camps to another camp. The majority of those people usually pass away on the way because there's no food, they don't give them anything to drink, the conditions are hard, they're not allowed to sleep. And the story is told, an account is told over, that literally they were so hungry, so thirsty, so famished, their tongues were sticking to the top of their mouths. And the Germans, for some reason, decided at one moment, this is a time for you guys to rest. I guess because the Germans wanted to rest. So that's what it seemingly looked like. So they couldn't believe it. They all dropped to the floor with their tongues attached to their palates, their eyes rolling in the back of their head, so tired that they couldn't sleep at all, just stunned and laying down, hoping for some type of respite, for some refuge. And the Klausenberger Rebbe was a huge tzaddik. the Hasidic masters in general, they weren't just tzaddikim. They have tamimut. They have this purity. They have this, because of their non-connection to the secular world at all, and because they don't learn that wisdom, they're like almost like little children with Hashem, that they believe since they're little kids, and that belief doesn't change because they grew up or because they were jaded by society. They never saw anything different. This is their whole life. So all of a sudden, they're all laying on the floor, and the Klausenberger Rebbe looks up at them and he tells them to start digging. And they look at him like, first of all, they had no energy. They had no strength. Secondly, they didn't want to wake up the Germans. Thirdly, the Klausenberger Rebbe barely ever speaks. He was barely ever spoke in the camps unless they came up to him for advice or for help. And they saw in his eyes how serious he was, that he knew something they didn't know. So they decided to start digging. And, they dig up an inch, maybe an hour goes by because they have no energy, and dig up another inch. And after a few hours, something happened. They hit a point in the ground and water started shooting up from the ground. And none of them could believe it. There was religious people there. There was completely secular people there. There was atheists. There was agnostics. They were all in this group of Jewish people. And they all saw water miraculously shoot up from the ground based on something the Klausenberger Rebbe knew. And they all started dancing and singing, even though they had no food, even though they had no drink before that, even though a moment before they were literally holding on barely to their lives. And in one moment that they experienced that Hashem runs the world, that there's such a thing as hashgacha pratit, that Hashem can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, that this tzaddik has some type of connection with Hashem that's so real that he was able to perform or create a miracle. So then all of the feelings of death went away, and dancing and singing took over them. The Germans came back, one of them, and he was dumbfounded. He wanted to do something to them, but he was so shocked at what was taking place, the whole thing, he didn't respond. Another officer came over, and he blamed that German for letting them rest, instead of blaming the Jews, which is very unusual. So they continued their celebration. And afterwards, they asked the Klausenberger Rebbe, you were never in this area of Europe. How did you know that there was water under the ground there? And he said, I didn't. So they said, if you didn't know, so then why did you tell them to start digging? So he said that Chazal teach us, like very simply, just like, there's gravity. When he says Chazal teach us, it means this is a fact. The sages taught us, so this is a reality. That Yeshua, salvation, comes in the blink of an eye. So we had a moment that there could be a blink of an eye. So I thought, why not now? He had no idea if there was water there. He had no idea about the geography. He had no idea about anything. All he knew was not the wisdom of secular wisdom, was not the wisdom of science or teva. What he knew was the chokhmah of Torah. He knew emunah. And because he had this deep emunah that Hashem is machadesh, for him, it's not a chiddush for Hashem to create a new reality, even if there's not water under there. Because Hashem does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And because the Klausenberger Rebbe didn't have any of these dinim, he didn't have these judgments because he wasn't invested in secular wisdom, he wasn't exposed to it. So by the time he needed Hashem, he was able to have a night of shimorim. He was able to have a night where these damagers were taken away, and there was a mini type of redemption that took place for all of them. And this is why Rabbi Nachman says that for Jewish people, Chokhmat HaTeva is a sword. Rabbi Nachman was not makpid on anything, not in his own personal life, and definitely not in halakha, because he says that we're not angels, and that anybody who's makpid in halakha, anybody who's stringent in halakha, more than what the sages told us we have to do, he's never going to live a life of joy. And Rabbi Nachman says that joy is the key to doing the mitzvot. But for some reason, this thing, which is not even so sure that it's even not allowed according to the sages, called secular wisdom, he was very, very, very makpid that for sure his Hasidim, but all the Jewish people, it's a sore for them to learn these things. Why? Because Rav Natan explains that the whole essence of secular wisdom is bli emunah. It's bli emunah. It's without faith that Hashem runs the world. That's the whole essence of it. So when you learn those things, that infuses your thoughts, and it starts to place doubts in your heart. From that simple emunah that you used to have, it's been taken away from you. And it's shrouded now in doubts and questions, feikot, philosophies. And that then goes into your emotions. And all of a sudden you feel heaviness, and you feel lack of joy, and you feel lack of hope and anxiety. And then that comes into negative actions. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you've created your own little personal hidden Mitzrayim that you're suffering for no other reason other than the fact that the believer inside of you has been washed away and has been poured over with stone. And now your heart is not a lev basar, it's not a heart of flesh. It's a heart of stone. Rabbi Nachman teaches that at the end, everyone's going to need me. Because in the end, everyone's going to be Breslov. What does that mean? It means that in the end, everyone's going to have a lev basar. These are the words, the letters of Breslov. Everyone in the end is going to have a emunah in Hashem, that he's machadesh. That's what's going to bring the redemption. That's what's going to bring the geula. That's what it means to be a Breslover chassid. Ki az nitkale hashgacha. Because as soon as these dinim were taken away that night, Hashem's hashgacha, Hashem's orchestration of reality was perfectly clear. And then was nullified all of the damages in life. Anybody have any questions from today's lesson? Did anybody hear me? No, wonderful. Okay. If you guys didn't learn something, I certainly learned something. And I hope Bezrat Hashem this will be recorded and people will be able to hear it. I hope you guys have a great day. If you guys have any questions in the last second and you want to ask me, I'm here. If not, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you. Okay, you heard me. Thank God. Also, another thank you. Okay, great. By the way, you guys really need to get these classes out to everybody. Okay? Thank God the amount of subscribers is going up on our YouTube channel every day. But we have to spread the light. We have to shine the light. So many people could be helped by these classes. So many people whose lives can literally be transformed. And people need it. We really need it. So when you get a moment, you get a second, think about who you think could benefit from these classes. And don't be afraid to send it out. And worst comes to worst, they don't want it. Best comes to best, their life changes. Is Tzion on Facebook? Yes, Tzion is on Facebook. I do not know exactly how updated it is, so you can check it out, but it is there. There's a question on the bottom here. Any tips other than hippo and refraining from secular wisdom? Any other tips beside hippodadut and refraining from secular wisdom? Yes. Make sure that you learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah every single day. And that in your hippodadut, you turn what you learn into tefillah. So as part of your hippodadut, to make sure you do your very, very best to encourage Machadesh, yeah. So learn Rabbi Nachman's Torah, learn Reb Natan's Torah, don't go a day without it, and then take what you learn, like you just learned in the class, and turn it into your own personal prayer. You know, for example, what it could be like for our classes, I just learned today that in truth, you can do anything. And even though I was already told that, seemingly the only barrier is the fact that I've invested in secular wisdom, that I believe that Teva, nature, precedes and overrides the hashgacha, the providence of Hashem. But I don't want to feel that anymore. I want to really mamish believe that you're in control of my life, that if you want to, you can do what you want, whenever you want. So, you know, Rabbi Nachman says in the 7th Torah of Likutey that the key to getting this type of emunah, that Hashem is machadesh, is through the Torah, okay? And then he says, what Torah? Specifically, it's the Torah that comes from the eights of true tzaddikim. So the tikkun, Rabbi Nachman says, it's very deep, because we know that when did we lose this emunah initially? When the Nachash gave Chava bad advice. So Rabbi Nachman says, you see from this that the geula is going to come with good advice. What's good advice? Advice that's true. Who's holding on to true advice? He says only true tzaddikim. So there's a book called Likutey. It's all Rabbi Nachman's advice on all different types of topics. If you want to bring this emunah into your heart, find pieces of advice based on things that you're struggling with. And even if it doesn't make sense to you, do it anyway. When you do it with emunah, with faith, that you believe that it's going to help you, it's going to work, even though it might not intellectually make sense to you, this itself is going to draw emunah that Hashem is machadish in your life. Where can we get that? Breslov Research Institute has a book that's called Pieces of Advice, I think, or it's just called Advice. So look for that. It's called Advice. And in Hebrew, it's called Likutey Eitzot, like the gathering of Rabbi Nachman's Eitzes. Obviously, Hibodadu is already an Eitzah. Learning his Torah and turning into Tefillah is another Eitzah. Getting up for Tikkun Chatzot is another Eitzah. Saying Tehillim every day is another Eitzah. Rabbi Nachman is full of Eitzahs. Probably what makes him unique, one thing that makes him unique amongst all the tzaddikim was his focus on practical advice, to the extent that he was really advocating to his student Reb Natan to draw all of the practical pieces of advice from all of his lessons, and to the extent that it became a sefer in and of itself. Any other questions? What's an area? Eitzah. Oh, Eitzah means advice. Eitzah means advice, a practical piece of advice, what I should do in this situation, what I should do here. Just on a side note, Rabbi Nachman, we speak about this constantly, but he says clearly that a person's ability to experience the hashgacha, the providence, the orchestration of Hashem in his life is completely codependent and parallel to his level of sexual purity. So another big piece of advice would be to make sure that you do your very best to act in a way which is considered kodesh, it's considered within the dictates of the Torah. Obviously what you see, so like just a practical example would be, let's say for instance, my favorite, I watched The Notebook, okay? So, I think it's PG-13. I don't think it's like a rated R movie. So you might not think it's like such a big deal, but just watching things which are considered outside of the dictates of Torah, Rabbi Nachman says this itself conceals the light of Hashem from you. It's too deep to get into the connection right now between emunah and sexual purity, but just to make it try as simple as possible, you have 10 sfirot, you have 10 revelations of godliness. The final two are called Yesod and Malchut. The Yesod is concentrated on sexual purity, and the Malchut is emunah. And it's taught in Kabbalah that these two, so to speak, are always together. They're like husband and wife. So therefore, the more that you take on one of them, Rabbi Nachman says, the more automatically you're going to take on the other. Meaning the more emunah that you have that Hashem runs the world, to that degree you're going to be able to work on achieving tikkun of the brid, rectification of sexuality according to the Torah. And the opposite as well. To the degree that a person achieves a higher degree of sexuality, actions, thoughts, feelings, everything, to that degree he's going to be able to believe that Hashem is machadish. And someone asked on the bottom, what is machadish? Machadish means that Hashem renews reality. That the fundamental principle of the Torah, according to all of the sages, is that Hashem created the world yesh ma'ayin, something from nothing. And that this is in contradistinction until very recently to all the philosophers who thought that everything that is here was always here. Only recently with the theory of the Big Bang has the scientific world come onto the same premise that the Torah has taught for thousands of years, that really somethingness came from nothingness. And why is that so important? Because if something came from nothing, meaning that reality came from Hashem, so that means that Hashem can change it. But if something always existed, even before, so to speak, there's a concept of God, so then nature and the laws of nature are never changing. And this is a complete stira, this is a complete contradiction to the foundations of faith in the Torah. Hi, Rabbi, we're going through a difficult time right now. I love your classes and they help me. And I think everything happens for the good, even the bad. But my husband is having a tough time. I don't know how to deal with it. It's very stressful. Please help. Okay. Rabbi Nachman says in the 5th Torah of Likutey Moran that whenever you see something lacking in your life or in the world or the people around you, the reason that you're seeing it is to fill that lack. So how could you fill somebody else's lack? It sounds unreasonable and it sounds like too much pressure also. Rabbi Nachman says you fill the lack by praying for that lack. So as part of your hipodadut every day, one of the reasons why you see problems in your life, whether you have issues with your spouse or shalom bayit issues, peace at home issues, or you see issues with your children, issues with getting work, issues with growing spiritually, issues with sadness or anxiety. So all of these are really invitations from Hashem to get closer to him. And the reason he's giving you this, while on the surface it just seems painful and bad, once you speak to Hashem about it, you're already closer to finding the good that comes from it. There's a lot more to be said about that. So therefore, the first thing I would say is that part of your hipodadut every day should be to pray for him. And specifically in the area that you see that he's struggling. Another thing is, spouses are very interconnected, very, very, very interconnected. Rabbi Nachman explains that the wife of a man is the nefesh of his own soul. The meaning to say that his wife, in some sense, is not even different or a different person than the husband. She's actually an extension of him, which is why it says that Chava was created from Adam. And even though she represents a different part of that soul, and therefore the wife and the husband are often very different, they're actually complementary and they're one whole. That's why it says that when Hashem created man and female, he created him. So what do you mean him? He created them, but he created him because it's really one. So therefore, the more that you work on yourself spiritually, automatically your husband is going to grow from this as well. So this is another big one that I would consider. How can I find ways to work on myself, even if it's not in this area that he's struggling with? Because Rabbi Nachman says that whenever a Jew grows, automatically everyone else has to come up with him. Or if a Jew goes down, automatically everyone has to go down with him, because he says that no two Jews can be in the same place at the same time. But all the more so, kol sheken, that your own husband or your own wife, that she's a part of you. So for sure she's going to go up when you go up, or he's going to go up when you go up. So just to focus on ways that you can grow spiritually. And obviously the third one is to take this as a challenge for you to grow in your own emunah. Because the truth is, it's usually not the events that take place in our life that cause us such turmoil. It's the fact that we don't believe or see that they're good, right? So let's say, for instance, Chas v'shalom, your husband is having trouble finding work. So if he knows that the fact that he's having trouble finding work right now is going to lead to him finding the best job possible, let's say 3 weeks from now, so it wouldn't even bother him that he's not working for the next 3 weeks, because he knows that this is going to bring him to the very best job. But because he doesn't believe that, so that's why it's so painful. So for you, you could try to see this as a way that Hashem is trying to allow you to grow in your faith. That even though, you might say for yourself, I could see myself struggle and I could believe it's for the good, but when it's somebody else, I have trouble with that. So maybe that's the reason why it's happening, because Hashem wants your emunah to grow, not just for you, but for those around you. Because obviously the emunah that Hashem wants you to have is whole, not dependent on person, place, or thing, but always. I see it as good, but he's mad at me because he's so stressed and it makes me sad and scared for some reason. So it makes you sad and scared because you care about him and because of what we just said. Sadness and fear come from a deficit in emunah, which is not your fault. It's nobody's fault. I was an atheist my whole life, so I'm not like sitting on any place. I'm struggle with it as well, and I'm working on it every day to the best of my ability. But if a person is getting sad or scared, so they have work to do. Rabbi Nachman says there are times that people around you who usually are supportive of you will start being challenging you in ways that you hadn't been before, and contradicting you even, or causing opposition to you. And he says sometimes the only reason for that is because this is the only way Hashem feels that you're going to ultimately believe in yourself, because you're not able to do so on your own. And only, so to speak, like when the olive is being crushed, does the oil rise up to the top, meaning to say that your ability to believe in yourself and your own beliefs of faith can only be experienced at the highest level when those around you are denying them. So I have to go pick up my kids from school. I hope you guys had an amazing class. Try to take these teachings as seriously as possible. They are the most serious thing. And try to take the lessons into your life practically and turn what you learn into prayer. And Bezrat Hashem, you should all see real emunah very soon. And we should see the coming of the Mashiach and end to all of our suffering and sorrows and struggles, and to experience a time of peace, that night, the night of shimorim, the night that Hashem's been waiting for since the beginning, that we've been waiting for a long time.